Okay, so I can see the people are joining us. So hi, and we are going to slowly start the webinar as we are right on time. So hello, everyone. Today, I'm hosting the podcast with two very cool people from Headspring. So Ryan and Erin. So hello, today we are going to talk about how to hire like Headspring. So how to have a breathtaking recruitment process, and how it's possible, and how to structure the recruitment process and everything around the process. Because what we know is not only the tool, it's not only the process, it's about everything which is happening in the company, and how to structure everything to be able to cut down the technical screening review time to 5 minutes, which is crucial, especially when we are talking about the billable time, so the time that we can sell the time of our recruiters. So regarding the agenda for the next hour, we'll talk about Headspring recruitment objectives, challenges, and the processes they face on a daily basis, and also about some considerations and the technical factors for choosing the screening solution, and why the screening solution was needed at all, or screening tool. Then we'll cover a very important thing right now that is often omitted, and it shouldn't be. So we'll talk about the recruitment KPIs and how they were changed and during the implementation. And also we'll talk about how to ensure that the screening solution that you are choosing or you are thinking about is effective. And then at the end we'll have some time for the Q&A. So feel free to post the questions during the webinar, and there will be a dedicated time at the end to answer all of the questions. Now let's meet Erin and Ryan. Erin, who is a director of talent at Headspring, and Ryan, the technical person, so the director of engineering at Headspring. So it's great to have you here. I know that your experience is outstanding. So if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself. So maybe Erin, you will start.
Nice. Thank you so much for having us. We're thrilled to be here and thrilled for this partnership. So as you mentioned, I'm the director of talent over at Headspring. Over the past couple of decades, my background's been in consulting and in HR. So my number one focus at Headspring in particular is attracting and retaining the best technical talent in the industry, that the industry has to offer. So I'm really pleased to be here with Ryan. He's the technical expertise. So it's not often that you see an HR and a technical partnership quite like this. So thrilled to be here. Over to you, Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Ryan Thomas. I am the director of engineering at Headspring. I've been with Headspring for a little over 6 years, but I've been in IT for almost coming on 20 years, actually. And just like Erin mentioned, we do have to work very closely with each other to make sure we're finding the right talent for our company, because having the right talent is crucial to make sure that we engage with our clients correctly, and then we perform and execute on projects as efficiently as possible. So it's been a very close and rewarding partnership with Erin, and we've come a long way. And I'm happy to kind of talk to you guys today about some of the things we're doing.
Okay, so thanks for that. I have one question that just came to my mind. So Erin, do you think that being able to so closely and so effectively cooperate between the HR and IT is one of the success factors that you have at Headspring that makes your recruitment so effective?
Absolutely. I think to be a good technical recruiter and not be technical in nature, you have to get stuck into the business, and you have to rely on the subject matter experts. You have to stay curious and ask lots of questions. I know I couldn't be successful in our role as a talent team if we didn't have partners like Ryan. So that is an absolute differentiator for us, for sure.
Okay, so that was my expectation. Okay, so would like also to learn a little bit more about our attendees, so the participants. And let me just launch one very short poll The thing is that we can, the subject is very, very broad, and we want to like align this subject with our audience. So to like focus on the things that are most important for you. So if you could just answer the two questions that you should see right now. One is about your role. So if you are more HR focused or more tech focused or more management focused. And the second question is about the company size that you work on a daily basis. So we'll know more about that. So let's wait a few seconds more to get more answers. And yeah, so what I can see, the sweet spot for the companies is 51 to 200 employees. That's 1/3 of the question. There are also like 20% people from 5,000 plus companies, so big corporates, but also 20% from like 1 to 20. So pretty small companies. And related to the HR versus IT, it's basically almost the same, maybe a few percent more for HR. I think I can show the results. You should see them right now. So yeah, that's how it looks. So we should definitely focus on the companies that are like, let's say, 50 to 200. So if you 100 employees, and there is no focus on HR or IT because it's pretty equal. So thank you very much for sharing that. That's pretty useful. Okay, so yeah, as you already know how the agenda looks like. So maybe then Erin, you will like mention a little bit about Headspring. So who we are, or what the company does, etc.
Yeah, so hi, we're Headspring. We're a software consulting and development company. And what sets us apart, I believe, is the strong set of core values that drives us. Purpose is really at the core of everything we do. And we're adamant about our belief that great software has the power to transform businesses and lives together. So whether it's microservices, cloud, and DevOps, or legacy modernization, we're building better software to propel businesses into the future. And going into this year, like probably many of you on the webinar, we had some aggressive growth goals. And growth for us at Headspring isn't necessarily only about revenue and market expansion. It's about growing to the extent we can realize our purpose and values in new and different ways and deliver new and lasting value for our customers. And those goals are a couple of the reasons that we started this partnership with DevSkiller, and we're excited to share more with you on that journey together. So let's get started and take a deeper dive into the recruiting process. We're always on the hunt to find great software developers, whether that's in a permanent full-time role or a contractor. For full-time and permanent hires, we leverage a bespoke technical exercise, and that helps us understand how well individuals read code, how well they code and deliver on requirements, how well they interpret the requirements, and to what degree the solution meets the needs of those requirements. For contractors, we have a much shorter time frame where we need to find the right contractor for the right job at the right time. And so we've leveraged historically a 30 to 45 minute behavioral interview where our hiring manager, someone like Ryan, would get on the phone and vouch for those technical skills. And that had some big challenges going into this. And looking at our biggest challenges, the biggest challenge we face is that our process didn't scale with those growth goals. We needed to cast a wider net and ramp up our hiring. Ramp up our hiring efforts, not only qualify more candidates, but we needed a way to ramp up that engine without putting too much strain on our current team. So for our full-time permanent hires, to put that into perspective, each candidate's technical exercise required a minimum of 30 minutes to 135 minutes of billable engineering time. And when you're in the consulting business and literally time is money, that's a lot of investment from both our team and the business into this process. And that was drawing on 2 to 3 engineers to be part of that review. For contractors, we needed to move fast and leverage a different type of interview that didn't necessarily allow us to vet their technical skills to the depth that we'd be comfortable with or at the scale that we needed. So with these challenges in hand, we had a really clear set of criteria for choosing a technical solution that was going to move us forward. And if we take a look at those criteria, they're really focused around these 5 core things. So we needed a solution that would automate as much of the technical evaluation process as possible. That draw on our engineering team and that billable time just wasn't going to cut the mustard, so to speak. So we needed a way to provide early and fast failing evaluation for candidates who weren't fitting the criteria, but we also needed a way to serve as a benchmark for performance for candidates to get to the next step. It had to be practical and mirror real world work. Our bespoke evaluation process is meant to give candidates an experience of the type of work we do, and it's meant to give us an experience of what it would be like to work real hands-on with that candidate. So when we're looking at platforms, the ones that offered kind of those short academic style exercises didn't give us insight to the right candidates that we needed. So having a solution that mirrored real world work was a must. So getting away from the book smart, so to speak, and getting into the technical chops. We knew we needed the platform to be powerful but straightforward, and we wanted it to integrate with our applicant tracking system. So we use Greenhouse at Headspring, and we have a series of scorecards and things that really are meant to make sure that our candidate experience is a good one. And so having that integration into Greenhouse was key for us as well. The last note on here, I think, is maybe the most important note on this list, but it's to provide an ideal candidate experience. Hands down, we're looking at somebody's experience from the first touch point of how they learn about Headspring all the way through. And we want to create space for them to get to know us, but for us to get to know them, and do that in a way that feels supportive, that feels just in time, and feels slick like us. You know, our candidates and our clients expect a great experience. And so we wanted to be able to provide a technology solution that fit the bill, so to speak.
So yeah, and to kind of understand, when we started looking for a platform to kind of help us with this assessment of incoming candidates, I think it's important to kind of understand what our actual exercise was that we sent out before. It's basically a variation on FizzBuzz, and I think most of the people on the technical side of things are probably familiar with the FizzBuzz problem. But what we've done is we've taken the FizzBuzz problem and we've extended it into a sort of like an enterprise type application. So if you can imagine, you're working with an enterprise client, and for some reason they have a need for FizzBuzz to operate in their application. And for those of you who aren't familiar with FizzBuzz, it's effectively an exercise where you take a set of numbers, and if that number is divisible by 3, you print the word fizz. If it's divisible by 5, you print the word buzz. If it's divisible by 3 and 5, you print the word FizzBuzz. And if they're not divisible by any of those, then you just print the number itself. It's a very common thought exercise that you see, and there's lots of open solutions out there for anyone to kind of go and learn. And so what we want the candidate to kind of see something familiar, but then extend on that as if they're solving an enterprise problem. So the previous method of this exercise is that we would give them the set of requirements and features that they needed to build. We leave it completely up to the candidate to implement that however they see fit, including whichever language they feel most comfortable implementing it in. And so as a result, when we got this bespoke exercise back, the engineers who would review that would have to download the code from Greenhouse, extract it on their machine, find a way to run it. We are a .NET shop, so preferably they submitted something in .NET because that's what our engineers are used to and comfortable looking at. But if they didn't, that's okay. But we would have to find a way to run that code and then execute the code and make sure that it fit all of the requirements that we specified in the requirements document. And the way that we wrote the requirements document was that we would write it as if a client was writing the requirements. So it's not, a technical 1, 2, 3, 4, do this, do this, do this. It's more of a, we need it to handle this scenario. It would be nice if it did this. Make sure that it can handle this kind of edge case. And so in between, the lines, there's a lot of things to interpret there and a lot of assumptions to be made. And what we wanted to do was see how the candidate, made those assumptions and how they fulfilled the requirements. And to what extent they fulfilled the requirements. And so our engineers would have to download the application that they submitted. A, make sure it ran. B, see if they wrote any tests to validate any of the things that they wrote. And then C, finally go through line by line of code, see how they were tackling the requirements, and make sure they A, met all the requirements, the spoken and unspoken requirements, and did it in a way that, had clean code, clean architecture, and just wasn't completely crazy. And so our initial process at a minimum, would take about 15 to 20 minutes of just our engineer downloading the code and extracting it, looking through it, making sure they could run it. And then if it did run, then going through the actual review process, sometimes taking up to an hour per candidate. Now, we always assigned at least 2 engineers per candidate to review that code, which means that at a minimum, we were seeing about 30 to 45 minutes of billable time per candidate, and as much as 2 hours of billable time per candidate. And a lot of things we were seeing from our candidates is that they would submit code that we couldn't even get to build. And we would sometimes we'd have to reach out to the candidates and say, hey, this code you gave us, we can't even get it to compile. And then they would have some excuse, or they would say, well, I just couldn't figure it out, so I gave up and gave you what I did. And so that obviously is it's a kind of a waste of our time. I'm sorry, Jacob, you can go back. I'm still going through that previous slide. So when we started looking at platforms, on top of the fact that, a lot of the platforms we see out there have these kind of academic one-off fill in the blanks and solve this simple algorithm question, we needed something where we could have the candidate solve like a real world type problem. And if we could find a way to migrate our existing FizzBuzz application or existing FizzBuzz requirement set into the platform, that would be great, because then we wouldn't have to spend any additional time training our engineers on reviewing a new feature set. So the number one thing we looked at is, can it automatically evaluate if the candidate's code simply compiles? Because that right there knocks off a lot of potential candidates. If they can't submit code that compiles, even given plenty of feedback mechanisms about their code, before they even interact with us, then they're probably not going to be a good fit. The solution that we wrote for DevSkiller, and for those of you who don't know DevSkiller, you give it basically like a starter application, or like a skeleton type of application, enough so that they can pull it down, build it as is, even if it has no features, and be able to see kind of what tests that we've given them to help kind of fill in the blanks on some of the requirements. So that simple base skeleton solution that I built for DevSkiller has a set of tests that we call visible tests, that the candidate can see. Now, these are not great tests. They're tests that are more written to just kind of help answer some unanswered questions in the requirements document. And we found those kind of useful in that if the candidate has any questions about the features, how do they get those questions answered? Now, in our invite email that goes out, I give them my name and my email, and I welcome them to any questions that they may have during the exercise. And to date, I have yet to receive one email from a candidate asking me a question about the requirements. But instead, some of the better candidates do go through and they look at the tests that we have shown them, the visible tests, and they use that to kind of answer some of those unanswered questions. Now, there's a second subset of tests that they cannot see that DevSkiller executes once they submit their code. And those tests, I believe DevSkiller calls them validate, but they're hidden from the candidate. And these validate tests are used to actually test the full feature requirements given to the prospect. And so when these tests execute, it tests the full output that we're asking them to build. So there's no mistake as to what we've asked versus what they submitted. So when we look at what the candidate submits, it needs to build. If it doesn't build, obviously it's not going to pass any tests, and it's a pretty good indicator that they're not going to succeed. But if they pass visible tests, but they miss on some of the hidden tests, then that means that maybe they have some difficulty reading into the requirements, and that they only use kind of the shortest point between A and B to get to what they think is a valid solution. And so finding the great candidates are the ones who not only pass all the visible tests, but also kind of see the hidden requirements or kind of the edge cases that they need to cover, and get all the hidden tests to pass as well. And then finally, one thing that we kind of found that initially was a little bit frustrating is that some candidates had difficulty interacting with DevSkiller itself. And when I evaluated the platform, I actually went through a lot of their pre-written tests and took them from start to finish. I found the platform very intuitive, very straightforward. And so I was getting frustrated with candidates who would email me and say, hey, I can't do X, Y, and Z with the platform. I need another chance, or I need to do it a different way. And so very early on, I gave a lot of allowances to these people, and gave them second chances, gave them additional, methods to submit the code. And eventually I kind of realized that the people that I was dealing with or interacting with who had struggled with the DevSkiller platform really weren't good candidates. They weren't good at solving kind of their own problems and finding the help that they needed. When you first land on a DevSkiller exercise, it gives you, full information about how to do the test, but also gives you a video of how to interact with the platform. And as you're going through the DevSkiller platform, there's ample help and opportunity to seek out the information that you need to interact with the platform itself. And so what I found is that candidates who really struggle with the platform didn't really find a good way to seek help for the information that they're needing, and likely would not be a good candidate for Headspring. And so it actually flipped from becoming an early frustration to an early indicator that if a candidate has struggles with a platform, that they may not be a good fit for Headspring as well. Now we can move on, Jacob. So when we were looking for, a platform to kind of move to, again, we were going from a very manual process to something as automated as possible. The first thing that we kind of looked at is which platforms kind of treat .NET as a first-class citizen. We are primarily a .NET tech stack company. We hire primarily .NET developers, but we don't exclusively hire .NET developers. If we find that a developer is very strong in another language, and they have a passion for learning and growth, then we may consider hiring them in and then allowing them to transition to .NET. A lot of our clients, I would say 98% or more of the jobs we do are .NET, but we do occasionally dabble in other technologies. So it's not an exclusivity that we're looking for, but it is a first-class citizen for .NET that we're looking for. One of the biggest things is being able to customize the tests. Several of the platforms we evaluated, they wrote the tests and they were in charge of everything that you could put towards a candidate. And what I was looking for is something that we could leverage, but customize every step of the process. And DevSkiller is very, very robust in that regard. They give you a lot of pre-built, pre-made tests and exercises to kind of build off of, but you can also create your own from scratch, completely from scratch. And the method in which they do something like a programming exercise, it's a little bit unique. It's not 100% intuitive, but it is unique and really cool once you figure it out how to make the platform work for your coding tests. And I was able to write basically that skeleton exercise that I talked about, where we moved our bespoke FizzBuzz requirements into something that DevSkiller could automatically evaluate and serve the client or serve the candidate from start to finish. We've also leveraged some of the other features of DevSkiller, like the code review, which is the candidate's presented with a block of code, and they're asked to make comments similar to as you would on like a pull request. And then for that, what we're looking for is A, can they find problems with code? And B, how would they provide that feedback as if they were providing it to a team member on their team? So we're looking for things like, do they try to coach and mentor, or do they just simply state, this is wrong, fix it? And so by giving them kind of a screen where they can interact with code in a way like they would on a pull request, we get a lot of valuable insight there. And we can put that as part of the primary exercise that they run through. We also have a series of questions that we leverage that are, how you approach, conflict resolution. How do you approach kind of feature requirement definition? Some of the behavioral type questions that we may also reiterate and ask later in the behavioral interview. But we can also create those as part of the DevSkiller exercise so that the candidate gets one consistent experience from start to finish. As far as solution-based exercises, that was huge for us. We had not spent a lot of time looking for like an assessment type platform before this year, because we were very content and happy with our bespoke exercise and Word doc questionnaire that we've been sending out for years. But when I did start looking, what I found is that a lot of the testing platforms, they have these little academic thought problems that are fine for if you're looking for somebody like a college graduate to come in and say, okay, what did you learn in college? Prove it to me. But that's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for is we're looking for people with real world experience solving business problems and, picking apart business requirements and building solutions that work for those. And we're interested in how they build that as a complete application, not as a code snippet to run in like a harnessed platform. And I actually found that it was actually quite rare to find assessment platforms out there that offer the ability to test a start to finish full integration type problem. As far as easy to use for our non-technical staff, that's also really big. All of our engineers, we have to try to keep billing as much as possible, because that's how we make payroll. And that's how we keep people like Aaron and myself employed. So obviously the more time they're spending having to do some of the overhead and administrative work on a platform like DevSkiller, the less they're getting to bill. And so it's important that whichever platform we find, it's intuitive enough and easy enough to use and easy enough to train on, so that we can get some of our more non-technical people to be able to go in and, send tests, administer tests, answer any kind of basic questions that candidates may have about the testing platform without having to pull our engineers away from the billable work. And DevSkiller really does that great. As far as like the results of what DevSkiller provides, it was really pretty amazing. Because again, before we were using kind of engineers' time to go in and just use their own experience and their own knowledge to look at what the candidates wrote, determine if they've met the requirements, make some kind of objective and subjective opinions about the code the candidates wrote itself. And what DevSkiller gives us instead is a completely automated set of metrics and stats that it generates on the code itself. And we can actually use this to benchmark candidates coming down the pipeline, especially once we get kind of a handful through the process. And it allows us to very easily say, okay, this candidate coming in just off of DevSkiller, he looks like he may be kind of on the junior side. And so when we talk to him, let's try to suss out his experience and figure out, if he does have more senior experience that we can kind of level him a little bit higher, or the other way. If the candidate shows very strong on DevSkiller, we can challenge that on the behavioral side and make sure that that we're benchmarking correctly against the DevSkiller results. And finally, not finally, but the other thing, one of the other things is a lot of these platforms that we reviewed, you were forced or limited or railroaded into using their in-browser IDE. And I think a lot of developers will agree with me that browser IDEs are not great. Most of them are pretty terrible. And it just doesn't give a good experience to the candidate. DevSkiller actually offers the option to use their in-browser IDE, but also they could pull from a Git repo and develop on their own machine and their own IDE, what they're comfortable with, use the add-ons and the shortcuts that they're comfortable with, and then submit that code via Git and have it evaluated in the platform. And I didn't evaluate all assessment platforms, but I did evaluate quite a few. And I think this is probably the only one that I found where it had this ability for the candidate to pull via Git or just download a zip file and develop and work the problem on their own machine. And this was very important to me because it didn't change the experience we've been giving candidates up to this point. We want candidates to build the code in something they're comfortable in. One of the big things I like to say is that I take away excuses. And some of the excuses we've heard over the years is, well, I wasn't on my own laptop, or I was building in something I wasn't comfortable with or used to. Well, now you get to do that. You get to download it, build it in your own IDE. Everything's comfortable. All your shortcuts are there. Your color scheme is the same. Everything's fine. So being able to take away kind of some of those excuses is very powerful to me and very important to me. And finally, like I mentioned before, being able to incorporate all the other pieces of our kind of initial exercise, like the questionnaire, like the code review, and having a seamless client experience. Those were all very, very important and very vital to me. And I was really pretty thrilled when I started kind of digging deeper into DevSkiller as a platform and seeing that, yes, it checks all these boxes for us. And I told Aaron back when we were kind of looking through all these, I remember telling her, I was like, hey, I really think this is the one. Let's get a trial going. I just want to jump into it and get started. And I'm glad we did because, wow, it just really met the mark on a lot of things. All right, yeah, let me go ahead and move on to the next one. So as far as how it's affected our hiring process, we actually have a very proud and opinionated group of engineers at Headspring, and they're not. It's not like they're stuck up or anything, but they're very opinionated, in particular about the things to look for with new candidates. And so everyone was very comfortable with the FizzBuzz exercise we had before, and I was bracing myself for a hard conversion to get everybody else at the company on board with DevSkiller. And so what I did was I set up a series of meetings and demos for our primary engineering group that do most of the candidate exercise reviews. And I walked them through what DevSkiller provides. And what I found is that a little bit of hesitation kind of quickly turned to excitement. And now it's one of the first things that people ask for. It's like, well, how are they doing the DevSkiller? What did the DevSkiller look like? Because it's become kind of that trusted tool in the background. For the way we set it up, we previously our code review stage was, like I mentioned before, that kind of minimum of 15, maximum of 1 hour per engineer to go in and look at it per candidate. And now we've switched that and we've split it into 2 different subsections. And so every candidate first goes through the DevSkiller platform and they run the exercise and they get that initial kind of score. And then we have one engineer or myself who goes into each candidate and they just kind of glance at the initial results. And if those initial results meet a certain threshold, then they click accept. It pumps the score back over in a greenhouse, and then it goes on to the next stage where our engineering review group go in and they can skip kind of all that basic, pull down the code, try to run it, dig through the code and see if it meets all the feature requirements. Now they can jump straight into things like looking at the architecture, some of the things that do kind of take a more a keen eye, something that we can't really evaluate automatically. How they structure the code, how they build their classes, how they architect the solution to the problem, and kind of fill out some more subjective evaluation criteria. So ultimately, that initial stage, the DevSkiller part, takes approximately 5 minutes per candidate, 5 minutes or less, really, for that one engineer to go in, and they can knock them all out in about 30 minutes per day, even if we have a full pipeline. And for any candidates that make it past that initial stage of DevSkiller and go into the deeper code review section, now we can now our engineers really only take maybe like 15 to 30 minutes per candidate at that next stage to kind of dig into the architecture, because they know now that a lot of that initial stuff's already been done. And so it's made everything a lot smoother, a lot quicker. And now that we have a lot of this DevSkiller data to fall back on, we're able to kind of benchmark candidates against each other and feel more confident if they do get all the way to like the behavioral stage and then the offer stage, because now we can level them with a lot more confidence and know that when we bring them in, that we're bringing them in with the kind of expectations that we need to have for them at that level. Regarding like that first DevSkiller stage, I was actually surprised by how many we could filter out at that stage. I think I had stats somewhere, maybe Aaron has them on a later slide, but I want to say like 70% or so of candidates are eliminated at that DevSkiller stage, where they submit code that doesn't build, or it fails all the tests, or it passes some but doesn't meet our threshold for getting through the next level. And so most of our candidates that come in that don't meet some of those initial quality requirements that we're looking for never even have to go on to the full engineer review. And so that's immediate savings right there. And then finally, we can just reserve those prime candidates, those ones who do really well on DevSkiller, for that exclusive billable engineering time. And Diego, if you want the next slide. And really, like, one of the bigger impacts for me, especially because it affects me directly, is on the contractor side. Before, with contractors, we would do an approximate 30 minutes to an hour behavioral interview. Most of them last around 45 minutes. And there was usually no technical exercise involved. And we would take kind of that behavioral interview and use our gut reaction to that behavioral interview to know whether or not we feel comfortable with interacting with that person and bringing them onto a project. And as you can kind of expect, we had mixed results with this, and a lot of frustration. And we didn't have a lot of confidence in our ability to bring on contractors and have them do well. DevSkiller made it very easy and very trivial to just simply pop a DevSkiller over to their inbox and say, hey, before we talk to you, go ahead and run through this exercise. And we get to use the same exercise that we use for contractors that we do for our .NET candidates, or I'm sorry, our permanent candidates. And so when they complete the exercise, we get an immediate benchmark against the permanent hire candidates that we've already run through the pipeline. And we can get an immediate kind of feel for what their level is as, compared to like Headspring full-timers. And so even before, going in and talking to them, we have a confidence level that we can build off of and know how well they're going to do when they're leveraged as an individual contributor on a project. And that has also allowed us to filter out a lot of really poor candidates that are sent to us, by our partners, and avoid probably a lot of heartache from dealing with really poor candidates. And I think on the next slide, Jacob, if you would. So I think this goes back to Aaron. But one thing I wanted to mention is for our contractor candidates, we before this year, we maybe interacted with maybe 3 to 4 contractors per year. And with our huge growth goals this year, and just the ability to go out and find people, it's usually quicker to find contractors who are ready to go versus trying to find permanent hire candidates and run them through the entire pipeline. And so we've been kind of having to backfill positions on projects with contractors. And so we've gone from maybe using 3 to 4 contractors per year, and now we're using probably up to 20 to 30 contractors on our projects this year. And so in that process, we've gone from interviewing maybe 5 to 10 contractors per year to now we're looking at, I think I ran a count the other day. I've looked at probably close to 200 potential candidates for contractors this year. And I would not have been able to do that if we had our old method of 45 minutes per call, talking to 200 people. I simply don't have enough time in the day to do that and everything else I need to be doing. So DevSkiller has definitely saved us in that regard, in that I can save that behavioral interview section for only the candidates who really stand out and who I really feel good about being able to come in as an individual contributor and really rock it for us. Anyway, I'll hand it over to you, Aaron. You go ahead.
Nice. Well, this slide, I think, really captures some of the key things, the key improvements that you spoke to, Ryan. So we might not hit on all of these, but looking at success after the implementation, we were able to easily transition to DevSkiller platform. It made sure that what our engineers were used to was easily integrated into a slick new platform. DevSkiller gave us the ability to quickly screen candidates and assess them. 90% of the basic technical acumen that we look for at that initial stage, and do it in a automated way. You heard Ryan mention this, but the technical review time cut down from 135 minutes to 5 to 10 minutes per candidate. And what I love about that, and what you said, Ryan, is that automation enables us to focus more on the soft skills, but also on some of the finer details of their code and architecture and how they organize their code and the cleanliness of it. And that, for me, is worth our engineers' time to spend that 5 to 2 minutes per candidate there and let the tool do the heavy lifting. Looking at the rejection stat that you mentioned, Ryan, today we've rejected around 70% of candidates at that initial DevSkiller stage, simply because of how I was going to say pedantic. We're really spirited about clean code. It's our business and what we provide to our clients. And so, Headspring is a place that genuinely everyone checks their ego at the door. But the one thing you'll get a lot of spirited debate on is good, clean code. Does the code compile? Does it run? And how does a candidate's ability to fit into that and write clean code, read clean code, write codes that meet the requirements, how does that all jive with the rest of the team? And so net result here for permanent hires is that we've saved countless billable engineering hours. We've been able to get our engineers in the right parts of the conversation and let the tool do the heavy lifting. And then on the contractor side, if you look at what we've done there, we're easily able to generate specific tests from DevSkiller's built-in exercises to evaluate the specific needs. And so I think the message here is right skill at the right time and how you vet for the right skill at the right time, and using some of those automated tests and things that DevSkiller has automatically built in. It gave us really clear insight into the technical skills that weren't previously possible with that 45-minute conversation that Ryan was having. And then there are some bonus aspects of this that I think maybe I'll have Ryan speak to, but some of the things I know in our conversation, Ryan, that you liked was the plagiarism detection, the IP records, time tracking and auditing. What would you say about that?
Yes, I'm actually glad you pulled me back in on this. So when going through the very early stages of DevSkiller, I noticed that they have a built-in plagiarism detector, and they tracked the candidate's IP and where they submitted the test from. And I kind of brushed those aside. I was like, okay, those are kind of neat, but I'm not really worried about that. But during the process of our evaluation of DevSkiller, we actually had a contractor candidate who we were a little bit sketchy and dodgy about, and we asked them to do our old school FizzBuzz exercise, because we were gauging this candidate at a very junior level, and so I wanted to get a feel for their technical acumen. Well, when they submitted their FizzBuzz exercise to us, again, that older exercise that we're used to seeing, it ticked all the boxes. The code that they submitted was something that we would expect to see from a very, very senior principal level engineer at our company. And that kind of raised some eyebrows, because I don't think we've ever in the history of the company seen an exercise submitted that was so perfect and so clean. So we had just gained access to DevSkiller, and I believe this was actually the very first person we sent a test to. And I sent them one of the built-in DevSkiller exercises that they offered, because I hadn't had a chance to set up our own FizzBuzz exercise yet. And so I just kind of sent one of their .NET packages that had some questions and it had a programming exercise. And I fired it out to this candidate, and I said, hey, do us a favor and run through this exercise too as well. And so it took them about 2 days, and they came back and submitted it, and it came back with a 100% duplicate found, which means that DevSkiller and all the other candidates that have ever submitted anything against that test on their back end, they found an exact copy somewhere, where this candidate had found that code somewhere that somebody posted and shared and posted it as a solution into our exercise. But when they copy pasted it, they missed one of the trailing semicolons in the block of code. And so not only did they copy a perfectly working, perfect solution to the DevSkiller exercise, but they copied it without the semicolon, which means it didn't build. And if it didn't build, it's not going to run any tests. It failed all the tests. It failed all the verified tests. And they had probably the poorest result you could have on the platform. So 100% plagiarism, 100% failed. And it was very, very easy to have that conversation with them and say, I don't think we're going to do any business with you today. So that almost immediately was like, holy cow, this is a really, really cool feature that I'm really excited about now. And since then, we've actually used the platform to detect, a handful of other cheaters. There was one group, we were looking at new partners for working with contractors, and they had, I think, 3 or 4 candidates that they wanted to send us to kind of test out. We ran all 4 candidates. We sent the test to them through DevSkiller. And about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, I started getting notifications. I got 4 notifications in a row saying, so-and-so completed the test, so-and-so completed the test, so like all within seconds of each other. And I said, well, that's kind of strange. And so I went into DevSkiller, and DevSkiller tracks the timing of, as the candidates open the email, start the test, as they run through each section, you can kind of see their timing on all those different stages. And I noticed that between these 4, they were in lockstep through the exercise, going through each step of the exercise. And they submitted the exact same answers to like some of the multiple choice questions. And their code's submission was almost the exact same, just slight variations here and there, but almost the exact same. And so again, that made it a very easy conversation to have with that partner and say, listen, this kind of goes against the spirit of what we're looking for. We're not really looking for a team effort to go in and solve these exercises. We'd rather have kind of individual contributors doing individual contributions on the exercise to evaluate them each individually. And the partner assured us that that wasn't the case, assured us that everything was on the up and up. And given this hard evidence of to the otherwise, it made it very, very simple for us to say, again, I don't think we're going to do any business with you. Appreciate the effort. Have a good day. And so the plagiarism features and some of the other features built into the platform, that's probably some of my favorite things, because it's really opened my eyes to some of the people we deal with and made it very easy to have some tough conversations with bad actors. And it makes me happy to think about, honestly. But anyway, I'll give it back to Aaron.
Yeah, I think that's a good hook. We've talked a little bit about some of the KPIs. I wonder if we are, curious about what KPIs are valuable to this group. We got a kind of equal split between HR and IT. What do you think?
Yeah, we can launch a poll. That's what I did just now. So yeah, please feel what the KPIs are important for you. What I can say at this moment is that often when we talk with leads or potential customers and we ask about the KPIs, really a lot of companies, I think that maybe a half, maybe even more, are not tracking any valuable KPI. So we ask how many people have you put in your recruitment funnel last year, and they don't know. How many time do you spend per candidate? We don't know. So mostly these are companies that are continuously hiring, but it's more like they're continuously running the hiring process. Doesn't mean that they are hiring people. which is pretty sad, and it's also hard for us because when we try to, do a case study with such a customer and we ask how DevSkiller improved your process, they're saying a lot. Like it improved drastically, but do you have any numbers? No numbers. So like it's hard to use such values. Okay, so we have a results. I'm sharing the results right now. So it looks like the most important KPI is like a quality of hire. Still, what we learn at DevSkiller when we're working with Tom Gilbs, so a person who is like really good at metrics, was how to quantify the KPIs, because like the quality of hire, it's like a great name. But the problem is when you try to define what this quality means. So what does it mean that you have a high quality of hire? So like being able to align it in the whole company, that everyone in the company understand this KPI in the same way and be able to like express this KPI in numbers. That's very important thing about the KPIs. Also, like we see that the time to hire, which is probably the most popular KPI used, and then like a retention rate, candidate drop-off rate, and the cost per hire, which is like just 2 people are caring about the cost per hire, which probably like sounds as a pretty important metric, especially for like the companies that wants like to the money, which I thought it was pretty common, but it looks like it's not. Okay, do you want to, Erin, like comment these results, or we can move on?
Yeah, I'd just say that maybe no surprises here. I think it's a mix of all of these things that kind of brought us to evaluate and ultimately select DevSkiller as a partner. But I think quality of hire for us it's equal parts like how you show up in your behavior and how you also your technical skills and your ability, and being able to have the combination and the balance between both of those while having a great candidate experience, I think is the sweet spot that DevSkiller provides.
Yeah. Okay, so I will stop sharing that, and I will just talk a little bit about the solution. It was great, like described by Ryan and Erin. I think Ryan, you are better at explaining the solution than I am, which is pretty sad for me. But yeah, related like just the technical screening solution, the most important question at the very beginning that you should ask yourself is it worth to even think about using the technical screening solution? Because it's not like one solution that fits all. Like the first thing is that, of course, very important factor you need to consider before like thinking even about buying a tool like DevSkiller, or even like verifying the tool like DevSkiller, is the number of open positions, the number of open recruitments. How many people are you going to hire per year? Because if we are talking about hiring 2 or 3 developers, then probably just the effort to choose a solution and verify the trial will be higher than the savings from the platform. The second very important thing is the number of candidates to screen, because if you are going to hire 5 people and you have 5 candidates, then also like incorporating a tool and probably even using an ATS system makes no sense for such a thing, because the volume of your recruitment traffic is too low. Basically, the tools like DevSkiller are the more useful and the more effective with the number of candidates that are entering your recruitment funnel. The more candidates at the very early stages of the recruitment funnel, the more you gain from using the automated tooling. Because if you are, let's say, injecting 500 candidates into your recruitment funnel, and we can filter out 70 or 90%, which is also pretty common for our customers, it means that from 500 candidates, you need to talk or deal with 100, and the 400 candidates are rejected. And they are rejected not based on the resume, which is not the best solution for IT, because there are a lot of introverts or people who just cannot sell themselves, but they are pretty skilled. That it's important. And of course, the more the higher the cost of the IT involvement in the recruitment process, the more such tool makes sense. And what's also like important for us when we're designing DevSkiller, that was mostly covered by Ryan already, but at DevSkiller, we, from the very beginning, focus on real-life testing scenarios, and we hate whiteboard testing. So we are not asking people to implement the Fibonacci algorithm, because like how often do you implement Fibonacci in the real world? We more ask them to like, apply the technical knowledge to resolve a business problems, because knowing how to code in Java and being able to use Java or .NET to resolve a business problem, there are two totally different things. And we want to assess people based on their skills, their experience, not from what they remember about, like, complexity or big O notation from the university. Of course, being able to write a clean code is totally different thing. It's something that comes with the experience. So we have a lot of customers that are caring about the quality of code, that asks even candidate to, or they say, Uncle Bob this code. So they get this code and say, hey, like, please Uncle Bob this code. So clean this code, refactor this code to show me your skills, how you can deal with that. And that's also pretty important. The second very important factor is the positive candidate experience, and like being able to offer the native development experience for candidates, what Ryan mentioned. So like, hey, here is the Git repository, clone it to your local computer, resolve, and then simply Git push the solution is something that is working on DevSkiller in a few years. Regarding the web IDE, I fully agree with Ryan that basically most of the web IDEs suck. To be very honest, DevSkiller is probably the first platform, or I'm pretty sure the first platform, that was able to provide a good web IDE for the customers. It's not for the candidates. It's not present for all of the technologies right now, but we were able to, thanks to the partnership with JetBrains, to incorporate the JetBrains tooling like IntelliJ IDEA, PyCharm, Android Studio into our platform and embed this fully blown IDs in our web browser. So that's even better solution for the candidates, because it means no waiting for like downloading the dependencies, building the indexes as well. The third thing is that the unlimited number of test invitations is pretty important factor for DevSkiller. And the question is why? Some time ago, we were charging people based on the number of candidates they were verifying, because for us, that's the cost. The most candidates, the more candidates you have, the more we pay for the infrastructure, for the tool, etc. But then we realized that some of the customers were trying to like save few credits or few invitations, but selecting the candidates for selection. And it basically means that you are like having two recruitment process, not one. And it means that you're running recruitment on two different paces, which makes totally no sense. So right now we removed this pricing vector totally, and right now the only pricing dimension at DevSkiller is number of different skills that you want to verify, and then we don't care about the number of candidates. We care because we need to like optimize the platform to like be able to control the infrastructure costs. But basically, like we are saying to the customer, the more candidates you test, the better for you and the better for us, because we will be more happy with the platform. And of course, like seamless user interface that was already mentioned by Ryan and by Erin, that's the factor for them, because they don't need to waste time for training people with DevSkiller. And of course, like number of technologies, frameworks, we had a lot of customers that are verifying not one technology, but 10 different technologies or something like this. So they want to be sure that everything is present with this one. Okay, so that's basically it. We saved some time for the Q&A. Unfortunately, we were speaking a little bit long, so I think that we have like time for one or two questions, and that's all. So if you have questions, just send them. You can also like send us the questions on the social medias, and we'll be very happy to answer. And yeah, so thank you very much for joining. The webinar recording will be sent to you in a few days. And thank you very much, Ryan and Erin. I really enjoyed how you described how you use the tool, because we know that it's not only about the tool, it's about how you use that and how you incorporate it into your existing processes. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and yeah, have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye bye.